This is our Dometic mini Heki roof hatch, which is pretty common in a lot of vans, or the Heki range is pretty common in a lot of vans. Now on this side is a fly screen, and on this side is a blind, keep the sunlight out, keep the bugs and stuff out. One of the issues with these types of hatches are when you open the outside lid, that's going straight up to the outside, so whatever's floating around in the air during the day when you've got that vent open is going to sit on this mesh here, and because of the way that the lid angles up, any wind that's blowing in this direction particularly is going to hit that lid and just blow straight down. So the fly screen is going to become virtually a filter for anything that's blowing around in the wind. So these things get absolutely filthy, this mesh, and then they start to bag up at the end here. So they'll hang down, they'll spread out, and they just look like crap. So when there's a bit of a wind blowing, this thing's hanging down, like it blows down anyway with the wind that's pushing it down, and it'll fill it full of crap. So what we do is every, I don't know, whenever we can be bothered, or whenever I can be bothered, pull them out, take the mesh out, clean it, press it back into the right shape, and then put it back in. One of the things you'll notice with these types of hatches is there's no fixings around the outside at all. There's nothing around the outside. So that's a pretty good indicator. I've pulled it out quite a few times, so I already know how they come out, but that's a pretty good indicator that it's just going to pull away at some point. This screw in here is to fix this frame here into the roof of the van. It's not to hold this on at all. That's a different part of it altogether. So if we move across to one that I've already pulled off, this one's already been cleaned and put back in, so just taking the opportunity to do a bit of a video on how to get it out and how to clean it. You'll notice that there's a channel on this side, channel there, channel, so there's 4 channels all around the outside. That's pretty important because that's where the fixings go to hold it on. So I've pulled it out, we've got all 3 of them out, all the other one's back in because it's been repaired. This is the dirty mesh that's currently out of this one here, and it is absolutely filthy, and same with this one here. So I've actually pulled these out, but I've put this one back in just to show you how it all goes together. These are the clips that hold the mesh in and hold the frame in itself. Hopefully you can see what that looks like. It's spread out at the bottom. That's what holds it in. But these clips here are exactly the same as these clips here, and they spread out. So they're spread, they've got little teeth, one on either end, inside and outside. And then what happens is when you shove the vent back in, these things go up into here. Whoops. On here you don't take these things off, leave them on, but in that configuration on that frame they then push into here, and it's the spreading of these little teeth here that hold it in. So that's it, that's all that holds it in. So it's a matter of just putting a little bit of pressure on it to pull it down. Just be very careful because they're quite flimsy. There's not a lot of substance to these frames here. They're fairly flimsy. They'll twist and warp. So if you pull it down, you manage to get it off on this side here, and this one here over here holds a little bit better, and you keep pulling, then you're likely to snap it. So once you get it off, just keep working it around. Don't try and get this side off over here by pulling this side off harder, because you'll end up snapping it. So anyway, so I've given that a bit of a tub, cleaned it all, and it's ready to go back on when it's actually cleaned. So these same little clips are what hold the mesh on. This is the slider. Hang on, I have to put me doodah deck. So this is the slide that slides the mesh open and closed. It's on some strings here either side, and that's to stop it from binding. So if you pull it from one side over here, it'll pull from that side as well because of the strings attached and goes around in a configuration that keeps it square, so it won't bind up in the frame. It just runs along on these little metal strips here, and they are not even held in on this end anyway. They just lift out. So if we move that slide down a little bit, they just lift out, and we'll take those little retaining rings off the end when we get to that point. So there's 4 of these little clips across the slide end of it, and there's also 4 of them along here as well, and they'll come off. You can get them off by hand if you're lucky. They'll just peel off, or if you're struggling with that, just grab a pair of pliers, just grab them right on that edge up there. If you grab them too far down, obviously you're going to be squashing it on, making it harder to get off, which is not what you want to do. So work the little teeth, because there's little teeth on the inside as well, so just work them out, the mesh out of those teeth on that. Same with these ones on this end. Take them out. It's not really a lot that holds it in, and now that mesh is completely free. There. Lift that wire out. If I stick this between the pins. So once you lift that out, just hold on to the little cap and just spin the wire and pull the cap towards you, and it'll just pop off. No problem with that one, and no problem with that one. And that's that done. And then this will slide off altogether, and you can see, hopefully you can see how much that goes out of shape. Now that one that I've already cleaned up and put back in, that looked like this as well. But once you get all that dirt and crap out of it, and then let it dry, put it back into the shape that it's supposed to be, and then just let it sit until it's dry. It'll keep its shape for a little while. Won't last forever, because the same thing will happen. The wind will blow through it as the wind's blowing. As the wind's blowing, it's pushing that down, so that's what makes it bag. It's picking up all this crap in the air that's filtering, and it makes it absolutely filthy. And we've found it almost impossible to clean whilst it's installed. And it's relatively easy to get out, so we just take it out. So anyway, so then that just slides off. There's a hole in the end of the, there's a hole in there that it slides on. You've got the other end, and that's it. Now it's out. So all we do now is go and take it into the shower, spread it out, hose it with the shower, get a little brush from a brush and shovel, brush all the dirt and dust and shit and everything that's in it. Once it's wet, it'll become quite floppy, so it'll becomes a little bit stiff at the moment, but once it's wet, it'll start behaving like a wet t-shirt. It'll just hang down, so it becomes pretty easy to work with. So you can lie it on the floor of the shower, it will just sit there. I suppose you probably could hit it with a karcher at some distance. Big warning there, don't hit it too hard, too close, because I've not done it, so I don't know whether it'll damage it, but you'd have to be a little bit careful with it. But we've found that just a brush from a brush and shovel, and even a bit of soap maybe, put it in the shower and just brush it. And so I'm going to do that now, clean them, and I'll bring them back. I'm not going to film cleaning them with the brush and shovel. I'm sure most people can work out that part of it themselves. And then we let them dry, put them back in. It's a good idea to, this stuff here, the mesh itself slides on this sort of galvanised piece of wire quite easily, because the holes in there is quite big. But these things here can bind a little bit, and there's a little bit of surface corrosion on that rod there. So you could probably run a bit of Jex or a bit of light Stilo along that, just to take the roughness off it. Not too much, because it's It looks like it's gelt in there, and it would be, I'm presuming it is, because it would be a bit rusty if it wasn't. And then put a bit of dry lube on there, a bit of soap or a bit of dry lube on there before you put it back together. It will slide a little bit easier. But we'll clean out all this crap in here, clean out the bottom of, we don't have to take this light blind off, because you can just blow that out with either the vacuum cleaner on reverse or a compressor if you've got one, or whatever. But you be gentle with it, because there's not a lot in these things. They will break relatively easily if you put too much pressure on them. So we'll clean out all this crap in here, all through here, blow all that out with the compressor, clean the mesh, compress it, dry it, put it back in, and pop them back in. They're very, very easy to put back in, and then they're done, and they'll look like $1 million. Alright, so I just washed that one, and this was the other one that I haven't washed yet, and hopefully you can see the difference between the two of them. Even just sitting here, this one's a lot neater with all that dirt and crap out of it. It's sitting a lot neater. So then what we'll do is then just dry it in that pattern, so it's all snugged up, and we'll just roll it up in a towel, let it dry overnight. This one I'll go and wash now, and we'll put them back in. Very, very easy to put back in. We'll wash that first, of course, and put them back in and whack them back in the roof. And very, 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 very easy fix, and they'll look a lot better. And the problem, when they get filthy, and they just look like shit. They really do look. They look horrible when they're dirty, and it's such a simple clean to fix them. It's worth doing. So yeah, so this will just pull out. You actually just put a bit of pressure on it. It'll actually pull down. You just put a bit of pressure in each little point around it, and it'll come out. Just don't pull from one side expecting to pull the other side off, because you're just asking for trouble if you do that. And if you do it enough times, if you have a look in, you take one of these clips out. I'll just give you a quick look at something that for down the track. So if you pull that clip out of there, you'll see that, hopefully you'll see that there's a bit of a raised section there where that clip lives. So what you can do, once you've taken it out, this is probably maybe the 4th time I've done it, so maybe every 18 months. Really, you'll notice yourself, if you've got these hatches, you'll notice that they'll likely be filthy anyway, but you can't do it like every time they get dirty, because otherwise you'll be doing it every 2nd week. But if you move that, so that clip's come out of about there, if you move that across a little bit, then the teeth are going to bite in a different part of the plastic on this part, and they're also going to bite on a different piece of the plastic in the hatch itself. So that one's a lot longer section there. So you can move that along anywhere along there, and it will give the teeth somewhere fresh to bite into on this thing, and in the corresponding part on the roof, it will give the little bracket a brand spanking new virgin piece of plastic on the roof to bite into as well. So it'll fit back in as if it's just come straight from the factory, if you were to move these clips. I've not found it necessary to do that, but if it was, if you put it back up on the roof, and the next time you get to a campground, one corner is like hanging down a little bit because the teeth haven't bitten or whatever, just pull it back off, move these teeth across a little bit, these little brackets across a little bit, and they'll go back in fine. So before I put the mesh back in, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this rod out altogether and give it a bit of a rub up with this dry Jex just to smooth it up. I've done that one on the other side, and that's a lot smoother than what this one is here. And to get it off, it's got the same round disc on the end there. As long as you leave this in place where it is, that'll just slide back through that hole. So just grab hold of that disc on the end, and then turn the wire and unscrew it. It'll come off the end. Pull the wire out from this end, give it a tub up and with the Jex, and then put it back on. So we'll do that now. So it's just a matter of grabbing hold of that disc and turning the wire, and while you're pulling the wire out, disc will come off, and pulling the wire out, and then just giving it a bit of a rub, because this thing's basically sitting in the weather. When that hatch is open, this stuff's sitting in the weather, or open to the weather all the time, so it's getting a fair amount of I don't know whether it's calcium or whether it's corrosion or whatever onto that. So that's heaps smoother now than what it was. And then just feed it back through. There's no resistance in any of this whatsoever. Goes through the hole in the end, whether you can see the hole there. And then get that disc, put it back through, just so there's enough on both sides. There's enough sticking out on that side, and there's enough sticking out on that side, so it's pretty much in the centre, and that's all it is. Then we can feed that mesh back on. That's what we'll do now. So that's just a matter of grabbing hold of one of your clean mesh and feeding it through one hole, wire on one side, and through the hole on the other, and that's pretty much it. Give yourself a bit of room to work, and now all you have to do is attach it back onto that edge there and that inside edge there with these little clips that we took off before. So there's 8 of those, 2, 4, 6, 8 of those, and 2 more of those discs, one on each end of the rod. And now with the mesh, like any of these jobs that you do, take notice of how everything is before you start pulling it apart. So in this particular case, you need to know how much of this fly screen is attached to that plastic edge. Now that's not critical, but it's going to be more than just the very edge. It's not going to be the edge of that. It's going to be, I don't know, maybe a couple of thicknesses of that mesh that's going to be stuck into onto the edge of that before you clamp it down. And it's the same with the edge. I'm not sure I went through it before. You'll notice on the inside here, there's a thicker part there where one of the clips goes. One there, one there, one there, and same on this edge. You can see in there, there's one there, there, and there. So it's pretty easy. If you get it wrong, you shouldn't get it wrong. It's not that hard. Sorry, I can't come up with an alternative without being insulting, because it ain't that hard. Anyway, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that back on. I don't know why I turned that around. So I'm going to put in 2 of those, 2 folds. So it's just a matter of, not sure which is going to be the easiest to see on the camera. So find out where that little plate is, which is right there. Lift up the mesh, drop the metal thing over the top. Hopefully you can see that. Drop the metal thing over the mesh, so the mesh is right up hard to the top of that clip. Because it's going to be far easier to push that clip down over the plastic than it is to push it over the mesh, because it's going to grab hold of the mesh and just push it down with it. So you want the mesh up as high as it can be, like that, before you start its little trip south. So line it up with that and over the top and down. That's it, done. And I've got a tiny piece of wire, and which is just going to lift that over the lip of the plastic so it sits all nice and snug. At this point, do the one at the other end first before you do the middle ones, because that will give you the opportunity to pull it nice and snug. So work out where the other plate is, which is right there. Pull that mesh, put a little bit of pressure, not too much, you just don't want it baggy like that, you just want it so it's a little bit tight. Push it down, job done. And then find the other two, lift up the mesh, drop the clip over and then push it back down. Push it back down. So that's all neat and finished. Next, a little bit of wire, poke it in the hole, straighten it up so it's nice and neat. They will move, they will slide across. And that's it. So if we were to tip that upside down now, you'll see that that's sitting quite nicely. And much cleaner, like brand new. So put your little rings onto the end of the wire, the retainers to keep that wire. They don't have to be super tight, it's just so they don't fall out. They'll fall out that way, you just don't want to move them too much that way. One over here. One important point is that we haven't touched. Hang on a sec, I'll just get this one on. We haven't touched any of these clips here. Oops, that's in them. We haven't touched any of these clips around the outside, and they're the ones that hold it into the to the roof frame. So, but we haven't touched any of those, so they are in exactly the same position, doing exactly the same thing as what they were doing before. So now we just want to attach this end of the mesh, so it'll be the similar sort of thing, maybe one or two of that over the top of that piece of plastic, like that. Oops, colour line. This one goes on the outside of the plastic, not over the top of it. So find your little piece of plastic, your thicker piece of plastic with one, two, three and four. There's a small lip, whether you can see that there or not, which is cut down with the little bracket goes there, not on that lower part. So bring it up to where it needs to be, lift the mesh up so the bracket sits right over the top of that mesh, line it up with where you want it, and then just push it down. And then work your way along, start at the other end, lift it up, and push it down. And in the middle, there, and there, that's done. So that is now finished, and that looks like $1 million. That is heaps better than what it was. It looked like a piece of junk before, it was absolutely filthy, and now that is pretty much exactly what it would have looked like, or did look like, when the van was new. This is sitting upside down, obviously it should be that way, but what tends to happen with the mesh is there's not a lot of support in it, so when you've got it and the wind's blowing through it in particular, it tends to bag down, and over a period of time it tends to get a bit of a bellow in the middle of it. So just as a bit of an experiment, just to see how it goes, what I'm going to do is I'm going to spray it with a bit of hairspray. just to see whether whether I can, you know, get a little bit more support or stiffness through the middle of the mesh. Just got to be a little bit careful that I don't want to spray it all over the plastic, but more importantly, I don't want to spray it. I don't want to spray it on any of this this mechanism here where it slides along. So I'm not sure whether this stuff becomes sticky or what happens with it. Anyway, we'll put that on. We'll spray it on one of them, just see how it goes. If it makes any difference, I'll do them all. So we'll see how this goes. And for my, I don't have any hair at all, so this is going to be of no use to me afterwards anyway. But my hairspray of choice is L'Oreal of Paris Alnet. That's the one I like to use. So anyway, we'll see how we go. Tell you what, smells nice. I'll be very popular around the caravan park. So we'll just let that dry. I probably should have read the instructions before I started, shouldn't I? Yeah. 30 centimetres away, so that's almost. Short bursts, again almost. No stiffness, shine with no stiffness, stickiness or visible residue. I don't know how it. I'm kind of relying on the stiffness of it, but anyway, we'll let it dry and we'll put it back in after it's dry and we'll just see how it goes. Or I'll let that dry for about probably 15 minutes or so, and that is significantly more stiff than what the one in the roof is above it. Yeah, I'm actually pretty impressed with that. I don't know how long it's going to last. I don't know whether whether it's going to make much difference over time, but it certainly makes a bit of a difference now. Anyway, so for what it's worth, bit of hairspray on it seems to, at least temporarily, stop it from getting that bag through the middle of it. So now that just pushes back up into the roof, and which we'll do now. Now hopefully you'll be able to see that. Now when you're putting it back up, this is the opening side and that's the hinge side of the glass flap or the clear flap. So you want the blind part of it at the open side and the mesh part of it on the hinge side. And then so it's just a matter of lining up that piece of where the clips are into that channel all the way around. And there's on the outside there, and then just give it a bit of a tap. And that's done. So that can be closed. There it is there. And the reason why you do it that way is because when the blind part of it is closed, or open I should say, not closed, but when it's fully compressed into the side here, there's nothing that will fall on top of it. So when you've got the flap open and there's friggin' ants and branches and leaves and shit like that falling from the sky, it's not going to land on the top of here because you can't get it off. If something lands on the top of that, it's virtually impossible to get it off. At least with the mesh, you can tap it, or you can use a vacuum cleaner in reverse and blow it, and you can blow shit off it. But with this one you can't. So you want that at the end where the hinge is, or the handle is now when it's open, and you want this one flush on this side. And that's it. Now as far as pulling it down goes, it's just a matter of grabbing hold of it where you can get your fingers and give it a bit of a wriggle, and out it comes. There's very, very little holding that up. And if it gets a little bit loose, or when you get to your next campsite, it's hanging off on one side, take it down, move them little clips across a little bit, and put it back up, and it won't go anywhere. Cheers. So with that mesh now sprayed, it still feels really quite stiff up there, which is much different to what it felt like before without anything sprayed on it. Opens and closes perfectly. There's no, it's not hanging down at all, which is actually really good. We're actually really impressed. As I said before, I'm not 100% sure how long it's going to last, but it's clean anyway. That's the most important thing, is that it's clean, but having that spring in it, which it didn't have before, is really good.